Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile.
I'm your co-host, John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all my meta pals? In today's episode, we will be discussing the Akashic Record. What exactly are the Akashic Records? How does one access it? Join us and our very, very British special guest to find out.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. And bring us back, John.
And how am I bringing us back again with you?
I have no idea. Welcome back, I guess.
No, I know that part, but all right, welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we have a very British special guest. We have Lou, the Woowoo Guru, here.
Hello, Woowoo Guru.
Proper British.
I will say, though, I don't think I know a lot of British people. And you by far are one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. I'm honoured and privileged to hear that.
After our last session where we chatted and just got to know each other, all I left thinking to myself was, I want to be her friend.
Oh, mate. You know what? We started, I think it was meant to be about 15 minutes on it, and we were like an hour in, just still chatting. And like we're best mates from years gone by.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I knew it was a win, when you show up or the video comes on, and I think, weren't you wearing like a Nirvana shirt?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm in a different band t-shirt today, and this one's actually a cut up one, obviously. I look like a drummer. I'm a band t-shirt kind of girl. What we call a grebo over here.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, a grunger at heart.
Like, I automatically take music suggestion from anybody that had like the Exorcist theme song as their ringtone. So
well, that's
absolutely.
It. Yeah. It's got to be done, isn't it?
Anything happy horror, except, so I've got, like I was telling you, I've got Halloween, the Michael Myers theme song, as my ringtone, and it has gone off sometimes in the most unexpected places. Like, I will be at a Cub Scout event or something, and it goes off, and the parents just pause and look over at me, and I'm like, you can't say anything, because if you recognize that tone, you watch it too.
Well, that's exactly it. And I'll tell you what, the funniest thing is when you get put in that situation where all of a sudden all eyes are on you, and it's an unexpected. So my friend, and it's not my goddaughter, but it's my best friend's eldest. When she was a toddler and she was going to play school, kindergarten, I taught her how to whisper, "I see dead people." And she just pulled it out in the middle of play school one day. And the woman who runs the play school had to take my mate aside and say, "I don't know what's going on with your daughter." She'd obviously not seen Sixth Sense herself. But and so this little girl's running around just going, "I see dead people."
I love that so much.
My friend said to me, "For God's sake, Louise, like, you're going to lose your auntie status if you keep on teaching my kids this bullshit." I was like, well, I think it's hilarious, so I'm going to continue.
Absolutely.
I feel like you would upgrade in my house if you taught that.
Absolutely. My 4-year-old nephew, he's 5 now. He actually likes to watch Child's Play, Chucky. So every once in a while, he'll be like, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?"
I need to find a new child to teach Red Rum.
Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
I volunteer my youngest. He will do it.
I will take you up on that. Next time we speak, I want to see that in action, please.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
My nephew, my sister's got 13-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. And my nephew, as I say, they're 13 now. But when he was younger, he was obsessed with Coraline and anything kind of Tim Burton or Tim Burton-esque. And he was just like, I bought him the key, you know, the Coraline key, and he was obsessed with that. And now, as he's gotten older, I got him into, like, you know, obviously zombie stuff. I love zombie stuff. So he was well into that. I started getting him all the, like, Walking Dead graphic novels. My sister was fine with it. You know, her ex, however, did not like it one bit, but he can do one. And now he's obsessed with, like, slasher films and stuff like that. And he actually sort of looks down his nose at me about what horror I like. And he's like, oh, that's not even scary. And I'm like, well, it's not about being scary sometimes. Sometimes it's just about the joy that you kind of feel when you're watching a horror, when it, you know, it doesn't have to scare the shit out of you for you to enjoy it on a totally different level. It's just, you know, for me, I just embrace it, whatever it may be. And sometimes the cheesier, the better. I absolutely love, like, my favourite horror of all time is Brain Dead, or I think it's called Dead or Alive as well. It's called Dead Alive. I don't know. It was Peter Jackson, like, you know, yonks ago. I think I watched that at my 11th birthday party sleepover, and I can still quote it word for word. I could watch it and I could literally, you know, your mother ate my dog, and I kick ass for the Lord, and like all of the different bits. It's just absolutely brilliant, especially when he goes through the zombies with a freaking lawnmower, you know, and it's just the gore. It's absolutely amazing, and that will remain my favourite for all time, I think. You know, it was like my first real soiree into proper gore. Yeah, I think it made me the woman I am today, actually.
That's a bold statement. Dead Alive.
Bold statement.
I need to revisit that movie. I know what you mean, though. I feel like it's the quotable horror movies that make it, like, even more memorable, because
Lost
then you find
Boys.
yourself, yes, the Lost Boys. Oh my God, I love you. See, I told you I was gonna be your friend.
My niece stayed over a couple of weeks back, 2-3 weeks ago, my 13-year-old niece. And I was like, right, let's go through all of my old DVDs. Let's have a little look, shall we? And I was like, I'd had a couple of drinks. So I was like, right, oh, you've got to watch this. Oh my God, you've got to watch this. And I ended up this stack. And I was like, right, you've got to pick from these. Because it was like, you know, yeah, there's Lost Boys in there. The original Buffy before the series came out.
Yes,
you know,
yes. Christy
Interview
Swanson.
with a Vampire, like, you know, all of the proper old scores, like, you've got to watch. And Lost Boys, I mean, the best part in Lost Boys is that dude when they're where the you know, the at the fairground, the singer dude who's just like, he's just, it's just the funniest thing I've ever fucking seen in my life. I'm just
that's like a really extended moment too. Like, they really focus on that. It's not like, you know, he's in the background. It's just like random cut to oily saxophone player shaking his hips, just feeling it.
It's so, and the amount of whooping that goes on as well. It's like, woo, yeah, woo, yeah. And I'm going, it's got both Corys in it. It's got both Corys in it. Like this to my niece. She's going, who? You know, she's 13. She ain't got a bloody clue what I'm banging on about. And I'm just like, you've got to watch this, dude. So she's gonna stay over again. I'm gonna make her watch. I say make her, but she's gonna embrace it. Silent Hill, because, you know, Silent Hill's great. And I got her to watch The Mist only because she hadn't read the book, and I was like, the ending in the film is, to me, probably the best part of it. And also, she was like, oh, like, she was like, oh, so-and-so from The Walking Dead. Oh, so-and-so. She was like, oh, there's Carol. And then she's like, what's Captain Holt doing in the, you know, and it was like, she recognised all of the actors from a variety of different, you know, films or TV shows that she's seen. And, so I really enjoy being, in all honesty, the cool auntie who introduces kids, unbeknownst to their parents, to things that are probably entirely inappropriate, but they will freaking love, you know. And I think, wow, that's awesome. I'm awesome. So
I'm awesome.
And it's funny. My aunts used to do the same thing. Like, my mom and dad, they didn't really care, but my aunts used to do the same thing with all the rated R movies and stuff. When I was growing up, my grandma thought Ghostbusters was too scary for us. And I'm like 10, 11 at this point. Like, no, it's not scary. So she didn't want us to watch that. But we would always go watch, like, Terminator 2 or whatever else was rated R that was out there. My aunts are like, well, you're coming with us. Let's go. So I think I saw Dirty Dancing in the theaters, for crying out loud. And, I mean, I know that was PG-13, but still, it's kind of not proper for a kid. But still, it was cool.
I was the agent of my own terror. Because, like, my mom was like, here's a Blockbuster card. Pick whatever you want. And I'd always go to the horror section. And she's like, the deal is, if you pick these movies, you can't, like, sleep in my bedroom. So you better pick what you can handle. And I was picking Hellraiser. I was picking
Nice.
everything.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like, because for me, they order it, was alphabetically at Blockbuster. So I was just like picking, I was in a row and I would like memorize like where I ended off, what's new, what did I leave off on, and just like go section by section.
Nice.
um,
That's perfect.
yeah, and so it's just like when people are like, have you seen this one? It's like, probably if it was made in like the 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yeah, right.
early 2000s, likely because I was just going through all the movies. Lost Boys is my number one. Love that you mentioned that. Another quotable movie. I just recently watched Vampires versus the Bronx and fucking loved it. It very much reminded me of like the Goonies meets the Lost Boys with a little bit of like Latin flair. And I loved it so much.
Vampires versus the Bronx.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, and it's three. So like the protagonists, and I always love when they do this. The protagonists are like three, teens, preteens, and so it feels like the Goonies, and they get themselves into like a situation where it's like nobody believes them, and so they're like, well, I guess we'll solve it ourselves. So it reminds me of the Lost Boys. There is one scene where they go into the vampire's nest, and I'm not going to give away too much, but it reminded me very much. When I was watching it, I'm like, someone who wrote this film watched The Lost Boys. The direction they took, it could have been just like replication, right? But they went a different route, and it's like, okay, just enough of a love note to it without being like just a straight copycat. So I loved it.
That to me is one of the most important aspects. Like, so like when Shaun of the Dead came out, you're thinking, oh, okay, it's a comedy horror, let's say. But I'll tell you what, the amount of influences that that they've incorporated into that film in such a respectful and beautiful way is just off key. I mean, I love Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. I've been watching their stuff for years and years, and I just think that they're absolutely incredible. So yeah, Shaun of the Dead is definitely in my top 5 in terms of zombies, and Train to Busan. Oh my God! I love Korean horror. I'm just like all over that as well, because holy shit. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? It's just so well directed, and so it just keeps you going. It keeps you absolutely captivated throughout, and I do really love a comedy tinge to things as well, even if it's not kind of like really anything that's over the top. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but what Simon Pegg and Nick Frost do, I mean, the range of emotions in Shaun of the Dead, like the little bit when he figures out his mum's been bitten, and I was in bloody tears because she's a national treasure anyway in Britain, and I'm just like, oh no, Pickle, what's going on? Like, fuck! Like, it's so sad. It gets a lump in my throat, And one minute it's hilarious, the next minute it's quite scary, and the next minute you're crying, you're sobbing, and then you're back to laughing your tits off again. And I think, well, how do they manage to take you through that roller coaster whilst absolutely maintaining a fantastic film? They're geniuses as far as I'm concerned. That was their absolute apex. They're never ever going to create, like, obviously you've got the Cornetto trilogy, so Hot Fuzz and World's End, brilliant, but they're never ever going to top Shaun of the Dead. It's not going to happen. Not in our lifetime. Not in their lifetime. It's not going to happen. That's it. That's all I've got to say on the matter.
I think when you can successfully integrate the comedy in, that's what makes it a classic that is rewatchable. Because I think that the horror movies that just completely wreck you, you're like, man, that was amazing. I'd recommend anybody to watch it. But you don't keep rewatching it usually, because it's like, that wrecked you. That like destroyed you. Yeah. But then with the ones that make you laugh a little and you feel like you went on this journey afterwards, those are the ones you rewatch, because it's like, I had fun. I was terrified. I laughed. I was terrified again. I laughed. That was great. Let's do it again.
And the fact that they it's almost like it lulls you into this false sense of security where you suddenly get this kind of like, oh, I feel quite comfortable now. And then you're like, oh, fuck!
Exactly.
After you've kind of watched so much in particular, like in the horror genre, and you know, the all of the kind of subgenres of horror, you end up sort of knowing the structure. So I don't jump in films at all. If I do, it is so rare unless I watch them with somebody else. And when they jump, it makes me jump and then it pisses me off. And it takes me out of the film because I think, could you just piss off, please? And so now I've got into this sort of habit of like cooking myself a nice dinner, dim the lights, you know, and I get myself kind of all set up nicely. And I will watch it alone. I never used to. I used to be petrified. But now I'm like, no, if I'm going to watch a horror and I don't know what to expect, and I've read a few reviews and people have said, oh, it's really scary. And I think, oh, yeah, of course it is, right? I'm quite sort of snobby about it, I suppose. I think, yeah, all right then. And I'll watch it alone because it's just, there's more of an enjoyment. And I find that I'm not frightened by things that other people are frightened of. Because I'm used to like dealing with like, say, spirit worlds, I'm not frightened of ghosts and ghouls and things like that. They don't, unless I get a full body apparition, I won't, you know, shit myself over ghosts or sort of paranormal experiences or things like that. And to be perfectly honest, I don't really know what scares me. I think it's more the sense of, could that actually happen to me? Potentially, that leaves you with kind of a linger, you know, like the first time I watched, I think it was either the Ring or the Grudge. I can't remember which one it was now. I had to sleep with my TV on rather than off.
Okay, that was the Ring then.
The Ring, yeah. And I had to sleep with it. Oh, the one that got me the most, which was, God, when did I watch it? 2007, I reckon. Wreck, the original Spanish Wreck. That shit me up. Honestly, God, I could not deal with it. And then I stayed at my ex's house, and he lives in like this little village. And I was living on a main road in a town at the time. And then first time I stayed at his house after watching Wreck. And he said to me, oh, don't worry if you hear like a scratching on the windows. That's just the squirrels. And I was like, right. Oh, no, that's just a tree. And I was like, right. And then he said, don't worry if you hear a scratching like from the roof, because that's just the squirrels. And I was like, right. And then he fell asleep, and I was really aware of the fact that I could sort of feel a presence in his doorway. And I was aware of that. I'm thinking there's scratchy windows, there's scratchy roof. I fell asleep, and then I woke up, and he was above me. He was still asleep. He was like sleepwalking or sleep, you know, doing something. And he woke up. He was, as I opened my eyes, his face was in front of mine, and he just tapped me on the nose 3 times, laid back down, and carried on snoring. And I did not sleep for the rest of the night. And I said to him, that is the last time I stay at your house, mate. Fuck that noise. It was, so that film now carries like this fear because of what happened immediately afterwards as well. So yeah, I won't watch that again. Like, nah, no way. No, thank you.
He's so lucky that like you didn't accidentally like punch him in the face. If I woke up and someone's above me, I would be swiggy. Like
usually I'm, you know, they say fight or flight, and I'm fight. That's why I can't go in scare mazes and stuff, because I will deck you. Like, you come to me, bitch, and I'm gonna fucking have you. But in that moment, I just didn't know what to do. I mean, I must have still been half asleep, but it was the weirdest. Like, what the hell was this? Tap 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 on the nose. Yeah, like, it booked me. And then
nose booped you.
The thing is, one of my fears was, or has always been, waking up and opening my eyes and having a face immediately like above mine, like looking right at me. Like, that scares the shit out of me. The thought of that scares the shit out of me, and has been like a weird kind of fear of mine since I was a kid. And so to have it actually happen in real life, now I know. I'm just paralysed, you know. Just absolutely shitting my pants, not knowing what the fuck to do in that moment. Oh, it was the weirdest thing ever. But it's hilarious in retrospect, but at the time, nah.
No, what's going to be even funnier is if one day you wake up and there is a spirit above you and they nose boop you 3 times.
Yeah, maybe he was possessed by I don't know,
By
some
the
sort of
spirit in the room.
spirit of like, I don't know, a grandmother or something. It would be like cheek pinching, just like, oh, lovely, like my little fat cheeks.
Oh my gosh, that's so
I
funny.
don't need that. Don't need that shit.
I feel like if an ancestor possessed someone near me, I'd probably just get hit with the shoe or something.
Like I told you before, I said to both my grandparents I was very close to. I said to them, we had a conversation, you know, probably years before they actually like passed away. I said to them, if you can come back and visit me, make sure you do. And they both agreed. My granddad, absolute atheist through and through. He said, it's a load of old bloody cobblers, all religions like bollocks and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, but if I can, I will. And my nan, who was Christian, she was like, well, yeah, if I can, I will. And I was like, okay, that'll be great, but make sure it's not in the middle of the night at the foot of my bed, please, because I will not appreciate it. Like, come see me in the day. That's fine. Like, just be like, oh, all right. You know, my nan used to call me Louisiana. Just, hello, Louisiana, a little fruit cake or whatever. Not in the way that's going to absolutely scar me for life. So, yeah, I feel like we need to make deals with people before or even after they've passed on and just sort of say, listen, this is what I'm cool with, this is what I'm comfortable with, and this isn't, and make that very, very clear and set your boundaries in place, because otherwise you might be in for an absolute shit show of a shock.
How do you even assert those boundaries, though? Because it's one thing to say, this is what I accept, what I don't accept, but let's say they're just like, whatever. They don't respect the boundaries. Because we know humans, when they're alive, don't respect boundaries, so how do you ensure that the spirits respect your boundaries?
I think it very much depends on who it is. It very much depends on how adept you are at communicating with, you know, what I call next door. I've got upstairs, which is the extraterrestrials, and I've got next door, which is the spirit world. That's how I kind of talk about it. And I think with, you know, I've had an experience in the last just under a year ago, or with let's say a year kind of mark, where I had a really unpleasant entity in my house who was creating these like disgusting like stenches and shouting in my ear, like really like literally shouting in my ear and stuff like that, and it was really unpleasant. And I sort of said, you know, in the politest possible way, fuck off, and was firm, but it still carried on. And in the end, excuse me, fortunately, I had a friend who came and stayed with me who did like a banishing sort of ritual and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it's gone, it's not there anymore. But in terms of spirit, I think it's just a case of, in my experience, the more attention that you give to something, the more it kind of manifests. And if you're not happy with that, you ignore it. You're just like, listen, I've said, or don't, right? So don't. And all the while that it's like a pestering child. Like, don't interrupt me. You can keep saying to the child, don't interrupt me, but you're still giving them the attention. So say, no, I'm not cool with this. And then when it's playing up, ignore it. Because ultimately, you know, any sort of entity, like intelligent entity that isn't sort of a residual kind of, you know, sort of a repetition or whatever, anything intelligent will respond the same way humans respond. And like you say, some people respect your boundaries, some people don't. When it comes to your own, like, you know, family members who have passed on and stuff, what were they like this side of next door? When they're in the room with you, what were they like then? Like, how would you speak? It's the same sort of principle, really. In my experience, that's kind of how I would say it.
How long have you been able to, or been sensitive to like spiritual or paranormal experiences?
Since I was very little, since I was a toddler. I mean, my mum, when I was born, my mum always says that she said to everybody when I was a baby, like, oh, she's been here before. Like, there was just a sense of, you know, that I just kind of had an awareness of what was going on. And then when I was probably about 4, I can recall having sort of experiences that I couldn't articulate at the time, but I kind of felt, I don't know, it's really strange because I just felt things were not, that was normal. And I've got somebody who says to me now, why didn't you tell me all this growing up? And I was like, because I didn't really feel the necessity to sort of talk about it. I thought it was like a normal kind of thing that I was seeing things, like not seeing full-bodied apparitions to my knowledge, but hearing things, you know, obviously like shadows, smells, and just a sense of knowing that somebody else was there. And I've got some memories that I've talked to my mum about that actually didn't happen, but are accurate about my old, the house that my parents still live in. And she's like, oh no, well that didn't happen. You know, we weren't living there at that time, and you were a baby, or you weren't even born. You know, there's this whole thing where there's this door. I can see myself crawling through the hallway, and there's a door that I go past, and then I carry on crawling and I go into another door into the front room, which is an existing door. And there did used to be a door where the first door was, but you wouldn't know it now. And that was, you know, years before my parents even moved into that house. So it's strange that I'm aware of things in that vicinity that aren't, you know, in my head they're memories, but they're not, because physically it didn't happen.
You weren't there, or at least it wasn't in this present lifetime memory.
Yeah, that's it. And I do have a strong connection to that particular house. And we've got a chap, Charlie Baker, very sort of briefly, my nan and granddad moved down from London to Kent in the 60s, and they had a pub. And then there was an old chap who used to go in the pub, and he couldn't afford his house anymore. So my grandparents bought the house and said to him, you live there, you know, until, you know, you kind of aren't anymore. And with a view to either living there themselves or kind of like giving it to my parents and getting my parents to pay them back slowly. And then the guy, Charlie, he died in the house, and all throughout my childhood, and even now my parents still say it, if something happens in the house and it's unexplained, we're like, oh, Charlie didn't like that, oh bloody Charlie Baker, when the TV was changing channels, or, you know, when lights were going on and off, and like, so anything kind of electronic that used to happen. We used to get footsteps, shadows. Something that I still feel quite weird about now is I used to hear like my coat hangers in my wardrobe, in my closet. I could hear my clothes being moved around, and I could hear the scraping of the metal coat hanger along the metal pole. And now when I go to clothes shopping, I don't like sort of rummaging through racks and rails of clothes, because it gives me like a strange almost like a cringy sort of feeling, because I can remember just thinking, what is going on in my cupboard? Why is my wardrobe making noise, you know? And it was never really scary. It was just weird, I suppose. And we just always laughed. And at Christmas, like my favourite ones, like at Christmas, I'd be sitting wrapping presents, and I'd have like all the gifts are there. I've got my wrapping paper, got my sellotape, got my scissors, right? And I was sitting in the middle of the room just wrapping. And then suddenly the scissors would go missing, and I think, well, I haven't moved. And then I'd find them in the middle of the staircase or in the fridge. And I'm thinking, I haven't even moved. And it was the weirdest, it was just, yeah, totally weird. So, but then there used to be an old building, which was a school opposite my mum and dad's house. And that building was knocked down when I was about, I suppose I was 12 or 13 years old. And that's when most of the activity kind of stopped. In terms of Charlie, I mean, it's an ongoing joke in our family, so we still attribute anything that cocks up, we're like, bloody Charlie. But actually, around that time, the activity stopped. So I don't really know what the significance is, but I just noticed like the correlation there. But yeah, I mean, one of my mates, when I was a teenager, saw him sitting in a corner in a chair. And he was like gasping for breath, and he was like, and I was like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? He was like almost having a panic attack. And he said, there's an old man sitting in a chair, you know. And when I told my mum, she said, oh yeah, he had an armchair over there, and that's where he died. And I was like, holy shit, like none of the rest of us couldn't see anything. We were just like, what are you banging on about, mate? But he was adamant. He was really, like, literally almost like gulping for air at that moment in time, and just pointing to that corner of the room. And yeah, so very peculiar. Very peculiar.
So with you experiencing a lot of these activities, and it was just kind of norm for you growing up, at what point did you transition from just being aware of it, to actually like working with it?
That's a great question. So I started like reading tarot and things like that when I was about 11, about 11 years old. I was always fascinated. It's weird because again, I've spoken to my mum about this, and I've asked her, I was like, where the hell did I find out all this information about, like, how did I get my first deck of tarot cards? Because we didn't have, obviously, they have the internet. I'm 40 now. So this is like, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s I'm talking about.
Yeah, it wasn't trendy then.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, so number one, it wasn't trendy. But secondly, where the hell was I doing my research? Because I don't recall. I just always felt drawn to, I've always been drawn to nature. I've always been drawn to making lotions and potions, as I call it. I think a lot of children are anyway, particularly girls, going and picking off petals and leaves and things and like mixing them up in a bowl and put them on their dolls and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, first Ouija board was when I was 14. And even then it was like we made it out of a bit of cardboard. I mean, where the hell did I figure that out? It must have been from a movie or a TV show or something where I got the idea. So I've always been sort of known for being connected to things. There was a boy in my primary school, oh my God, I've just remembered this, called Gary Lancaster. I can remember his name as well. And he used to draw caricatures of people like in our class. So this is when I was about maybe 9 or 10 years old. And he drew me like as like a gypsy fortune teller with a crystal ball. So it must have been from way back when that people have kind of like looked at me in this way. And it's only been in sort of recent years that even more so in the last year, that I've recognised that people see that in me. And I always thought I didn't recognise that people saw that as part of me. I thought I sort of was quite private about it and kept it under wraps, but apparently not. Everyone's like, oh, you've always been a bit like this anyway, haven't you, Lou? And I've got people coming out the woodwork for tarot readings and all sorts of stuff because they absolutely know that it's part of who I am. But how they've got that impression of me, I'm still kind of like unsure of, because I don't feel that I've actively put that part of myself out there to people, but people are picking it up. So I'm obviously putting it out for them to be picking it up. So yeah.
People are pretty intuitive. And so, your friend who saw you as the gypsy, even if you weren't putting it out there, right? Like that's, or not like, hey guys, I do this. Like you're not wearing a sign. That vibe comes off. I think it's interesting that you're saying, I don't remember where I was exposed to that or got the information. And it's because we're so keyed in right now to like everything's at our fingertips. So we research everything on the internet, right? But all of that information on the internet came from someone who didn't have that, who didn't have something to Google, who didn't necessarily have like the textbook. Like now you can go into Barnes and Noble and there's a cute little box set of tarot cards and how to read and what they mean. And it's like, they didn't have those guides. It was all intuition. It was all intuitive based. And so for me, not saying the people that go to Barnes and Nobles and buy their tarot cards aren't intuitive, but I think for the people that don't have the manuscript to say this is exactly what this means, those are like the ones who are keying in purely to intuition because there's not something else influencing theirs. I've dabbled, I guess, with tarot cards. And, I never, like Google's there, but I'm too lazy. Let's be honest. I'm too fucking lazy to be bothered to like read books about it. So I just got a set, and it wasn't even tarot cards. They were oracle cards. And I liked them because they were beautiful. It had nothing to do with, I want to learn to read anything. It was just, this is the art on this is beautiful and it's drawing me in, and I'm going to buy those because it's just something about it.
What you're drawn to, what you find aesthetically pleasing, or so there's a pull for whatever reason, you go with that pull. And, I've bought several decks over the years, some of which are just sort of sitting on the shelf collecting dust because it was like, oh, they're nice. And then, but I didn't, I sort of bought them because I was being, I don't know, a little bit of a shopaholic and thinking, oh, I'll get another deck, oh, I need another deck. And then it's like, actually, they don't really resonate with me. But when you feel that draw and that pull towards things, you absolutely go, it's an intuitive, energetic thing. And you don't deny it. like feel it and go with it, because that's a huge part of it. And when it comes to all the guidebooks and the everything else, I mean, especially with like the Rider-Waite deck, the sort of traditional tarot deck, there are so many interpretations, and I find personally it just depends. If you've got a decent deck that's got all the sort of symbolism and everything else, and all the colours are in place and everything, you are drawn naturally to different aspects of those cards as and when they come out. So you could have the same cards come out for two different people, and you could interpret them entirely differently. But once you learn how to trust your own intuition, that's when the good shit happens. If you're just reading out of a guidebook, it might be, like, oh, that kind of resonates. But when you're doing it intuitively, and if you are gifted, which all of us are, we've all got the ability to do this, it's just if you're tuned in or not, then it becomes absolutely uncanny. It becomes undoubtable and unshakable to the people that you're reading for. And I think that is a huge part of it. So, going with your intuition. I mean, I'd encourage everyone to have a tarot deck just for their own benefit. Pull yourself a card every morning, have a look at it, like notice what you're seeing on it. What do the colours represent? What does it mean? What different symbols are there? Is there something that's really, really kind of, let's say, not hidden, but something inconspicuous that is jumping out at you? What does that mean? And you start to, it's a tool for self-analysis as much as it is anything else. It's a fascinating divination method, in my humble opinion.
To me, it felt like a focal point. Like, it felt like this is something to draw focus on. And the card for me, it made me draw inward. Just almost like, what message do I need to feel or hear today? But then when I would look at the book afterwards to see, okay, well, does that make sense with what's in the book? I'm like, oh shit, that doesn't match the card at all. Oh, well, I'm going to go with what I felt, not with what the book said.
Sometimes you got to burn the book, babe.
Right. And it's funny because now we've had two different people tell us the exact same thing about, pulling the cards, trusting your instincts and all of that. Pulling a card, doing one a day to see how you feel and all of that. So that's two people now that we've had on two different shows that told us that. So.
That's great.
Awesome.
Well, the thing is with any sort of divination method and with witchcraft in general, I would say, with the age of the internet, Christ, I sound old, don't I? With the age of the internet, you've got a lot of people out there telling you you should do it like this, and this is how to do it. They're creating this bullshit rule book that actually I was fortunate to have kind of mentors in my like late teens, and people like women I still know now who guided me into learning through myself, learning how to get in touch with my inner wisdom, my higher self, my intuition, and all of those, the divine feminine, all of those things. Whereas now people are out there peddling absolute bullshit because ultimately they want to sell it to you. Example, I was going to say that in French, so I was going to, pour exemple. I don't know why, because I'm learning Spanish at the moment, not French. So, but anyway, so one example is like with the Akashic Records. So you've got a lot of women out there, or a lot of people out there reading who say they're doing Akashic Records reading, which is what I do. But one thing that I will say to anybody who wants a reading is, would you rather have a reading, or would you like me to guide you through the process of being able to access the Akashic Records yourself? Because there are people out there saying these gifts are kind of only sort of, given to certain people, and that's bollocks. We've all got the ability to tap into this stuff, and anybody who tells you any different is full of shit. So if you want to be doing readings for yourself, you have to get in tune. You have to, it's not necessarily easy for everybody to listen to their inner wisdom and their soul voice and their higher self versus the mind monkeys and like the inner critic. It's like, it's like the angel and the devil on the shoulder type situation. So you have to be able to distinguish between the voices that you are kind of getting. I still question myself now. So today I was doing an Akashic Records reading for a client. Ended up 33 pages it ended up, and I was like, I've got to call it quits somewhere. But I was just this information was just coming out, and I was like, I can't stop. I was so involved. And then I sent it to her, And then I thought, I just suddenly went, oh, what, am I just making this up? And, you know, you question, for me, I've got, you know, the integrity's there. But I just thought, am I talking bollocks? Am I just making this up? Is this just coming, where's this coming from? You know, so you do have those moments of thinking, am I full of shit? The people that I object to who are out there are the people that either know they're full of shit and are still trying to sell and peddle crap to you, and those that are actually saying that this is an elite club that you're not welcome in. So if you want spiritual guidance, then you have to seek a guru, when actually a guru or a guide's responsibility is to hold your hand until you find that light yourself, so that you can then trust yourself without fear and guide yourself through it. And that's what I do in my coaching, is I make sure we get to the point where you are comfortable, you can release fear, you can release limiting beliefs, you can recognize them when they come up, you can do something about that, you can be a teacher and a student to yourself, you can connect to your past, present, future. You know, you can go through all that, because time isn't linear, you know, so you can go through all of that yourself. Sometimes it just takes somebody to hold that space for you, hold energy for you, and basically support you and reassure you throughout that part of your journey. So ultimately, you then open the cage and let them fly. But anyone that tells you that you need them by your side all the time, they're you know, that to me is just, I find it disgusting, and I think it's really...
They're selling you something.
It's snake oil, you know, and the thing is the reputation nowadays for anybody who is gifted, you know, psychically or whatever. There's a lot of stigma around it, because there's been so many people that have taken advantage of others because of it. And I think it's just a really sad thing when there are actually some real genuine people out there. I mean, I've paid for charlatans, of course I have. For over the years, I've been to see people that are talking out their arse. But I've also had some experiences that have been incredibly enlightening and inspiring, and absolutely spoken to me on a different level. So, you know, sometimes it's trial and error. I would say do your research. Like, I offer 15-minute free call. If somebody's thinking, oh, I don't know, contact me, you know, we'll book a call in and then we have a conversation. If you don't fancy it, don't worry about it. It's fine. There's no obligation. And if you don't like my vibe, I realise I'm a bit what we call Marmite. You either love me or hate me. So, you know, you're not going to connect with everybody on that level. But yeah, it's interesting. But anybody who knows their stuff will be saying, you are your own guide. You know, you are the person. You have the ability to connect, and they will be encouraging you to embody that yourself and uncover, you know, your gifts and activate your dormant gifts and all of those things. They won't be telling you to stick with them, let's say. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, wasn't it?
No, I think that was great. So you mentioned you did like a 35-page write-up on the Akashic Record. What is the Akashic Record?
Right, so
that is the question of the hour.
That's the question of the hour. So the Akasha is basically, simplified, is like the space in between. So it's, you know, when you think about, God, I don't want to get into like quantum theory or anything like that. But if you think about, I mean, we all know scientifically that matter is just vibrating, you know, particles. And when you look at like an atom, there is less actual matter than there is stuff, like, you know, space in between, let's say. So that space in between is what holds the record of everything that has been, that is, and that will be, or that could be. So it's kind of like the Akashic Records, people say that you should kind of treat it like a giant library, you know. It's a library and a record of all of these different happenings for each and every soul that's ever, incarnated, basically, including people in, like, you know, this dimension, including light beings, including all sorts of stuff. So it depends on what your belief system is to a degree. But I would just invite and encourage anybody to sort of keep an open mind about it. So Akasha effectively means the space in between. It's an Indian, it could be a Sanskrit word. But yeah, so the Akashic Records, there's a process that you can follow in order for you to access the Akashic Records yourself, to get information on yourself. about past lives, about your like soul group, starseed. You know, have you what sort of, did you come from somewhere else? Are you a new soul? Have you been around before a few times? All of that sort of stuff. And once you sort of start diving into it, what you uncover is insane. It's kind of like a journey of self-discovery. So it's almost a bit like therapy, really. And you start to realise, oh, I'm playing out this situation or this circumstance in my life now because of something that's happened to me in the past, in a past life. So, you know, like there's some people that are, let's say they're afraid of water, for example. They have a fear of drowning, but they've never had an encounter in this lifetime that would, you know, spur them into that. So it could be an inherited sort of trauma from a like generational, like from an ancestor or something like that. Or it could be because in a past life, something horrid happened to them, a traumatic event happened, and they're still kind of carrying that in their, you know, in their soul right now. So it's a fascinating journey of discovery. And then when it comes to reading on behalf of somebody else, there is a bit of a process in terms of, I would say, integrity. I mean, I only charge now because I've read for several people for free to make sure that I'm tuned in, I'm honed in, and, you know, I can safely say, okay, I'm going to go and do this for you. It's an honour and a privilege to do it for somebody else. You need their consent. You have to have written consent. I mean, I have written consent from them. And I would also give a refund if it's totally inaccurate. You know, I think that that's just having integrity. And it does, energetically, it takes a lot out of me personally. I think people that have been doing it for longer, I've only been doing it for about a year, but people that have been doing it for longer will know how to sort of protect their energy more. Whereas for me, I'm just like, oh, I'm knackered afterwards. I'm like, Christ, that was a journey. And once I'm in there, because I'm sort of naturally psychic as well, I get all this other stuff. So I kind of have to have like an any other business section at the end of my readings to kind of say, also this, and it might be a bit vague, but I need to say this to you. So yeah, so I've kind of got different headings that I use for things. So it'd be like soul group, or like starseed family, past lives. I can normally pick up on about sort of 2 or 3 that are quite relevant. With my client today, it was 4 actually. But the other thing is that anything that you go in search of, unless it's truly relevant to the person that you're reading for in that moment, you're not going to be granted access to anything else that you're not kind of that's not meant for you to sort of interpret and pass on. So I think that's really important to remember as well. Like, I'm not kind of uncovering any like dirty secrets or anything like that because it's not relevant. It's a fascinating process, and the first reading I had done, it made me cry. I was blown away by it. And the readings that I've done since for other people have been, you know, on point thus far. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and I know it's quite a popular thing at the moment as well. There is a bit of a trend forming, I've noticed online. But I think if you're naturally intuitive anyway, you're going to spot those who you would go to versus those that you wouldn't go to. And if they're not offering a free kind of what I call a connect and vibe call, and you're not sure, then don't go with that person. Go with somebody that you can have a conversation with prior, so that you know they're legit, because you'll pick up on that straight away. Even if it's like, you know, if it's over Zoom or in person, whatever it is, you will pick up on whether you trust that person or not. Go with your gut, go with your instincts on that. That would be my tip on that.
When it comes to the Akashic record, because you said it's in the space between particles, would you say that because I when you describe it, it almost sounds to me kind of like when we hear like the collective consciousness,
yeah,
is almost kind of what that feels like to me, where that exists. So I'm curious for you, like when you started working with it, did you realize that's what it was called, or did you just connect to something and that's what you ultimately learned it was? I guess, how does one even begin to understand this is what I'm working with, this is how I work with it?
I think, like, for me it was so I've always been very aware of the collective kind of consciousness and unconsciousness that's going on around us at all times, and any sort of like global or societal energetic shifts The difference is with the Akashic Records is that it's a very specific place for you to go and retrieve specific information, either for yourself or on behalf of somebody else. So that's why the consent is so important. Is you can't just pop in and expect to find stuff out about somebody who hasn't given you their consent. To be honest, I haven't done that, so I don't know whether it would be blocked from you or what would happen. I don't know what the consequences would be. So that's something I'll have to Google later on, isn't it? But in terms of what I was doing, I think that for me, I noticed that I was tapping into like my past lives, and I was getting information that I hadn't necessarily asked for, let's say. So things were coming to me that it wasn't necessarily my intention to go after that information. And then I was picking up on this information, and I started to just sort of research like what's going on. And I stumbled across an article that was about the Akashic Records, and that's kind of where my that was a jumping off point, I suppose, for my intrigue and curiosity as to what's all this about then. And it kind of made so much sense to me, because the information that I was getting, it was there were those sort of different kind of categories, I suppose, or levels, or whatever it may be. So I started to work more with myself originally, and going on these sort of deep journeys for hours and hours, and then just like journaling until my flipping arm was numb and the pages on fire, where I'm just like kind of like stream of consciousness. And the stuff that was coming up, I was like, holy shit, stuff that I worked on with a therapist that we couldn't figure out, what's the root cause of this? And then it's like, shit, all this stuff's coming out. That it was giving me a level of understanding and self-awareness that I'd never had before, other than when I was like really regularly dream journaling, which I would also say is a very important thing to do, but trying to distinguish between like what you've seen that day or a film you watched yesterday or some bullshit versus the messages that are trying to come through. That's quite a difficult process for a lot of people. I was fortunate enough to have kind of mentors, and got a lot of women in my life that are very encouraging with me, telling me to trust myself, go with my instincts, go with my intuition. You know more than you realise, and whatever. And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to pursue this and see if I can do this on behalf of other people. The feedback that I got was incredible, but also I was picking up on stuff psychically, as that's the thing. It's like separating the two things. When you're in the Akashic Records, you're actually finding specific information for that person, but then also at the same time, you've got your own kind of psychic ability kicking in, telling you other things, which I then have to separate. This is what I got from the Akashic Records. This is some other stuff that's just coming out for me, like it's coming up, and I don't necessarily know exactly what it means, but I've removed my sort of intellectual, logical filter, and it's like bleh, it's coming out of my mouth or out my fingertips at the time. So yeah, I suppose for anybody that wants to do it themselves, the two ways that I've done it for myself, when I go in for me, I go in via a spirit guide. So I do like a sort of a meditation, and then I meet one of my guides, and we go into the Akashic Records together, and I say, right, I need to know this, or give me a hand, or help me out with this, show me where I need to look, basically, like librarian, So I've got my spirit guide librarian that helps me. But when I go in on behalf of somebody else, there's a process. It's called a pathway prayer, and I'm very specific about the information that I'm giving when I go in. So I always ask for people's, name at birth, current name, date of birth, where they were born, and what time. So that because how many billions of freaking people have we had, right? So I want to be as specific as humanly possible to make sure that I've got the right person, because I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure of that. So that's why I ask for that information. And also, as I say, I ask for their written consent as well, so that I have got that, because, yeah, I just think that that's, having integrity, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit like, I always liken it to being like bilingual or multilingual. if you're already capable of speaking 2 languages, learning a third isn't going to be a necessarily difficult process for you. Whereas for somebody who's only experienced 1 language, learning a second one is going to be quite an arduous task. So for anybody who's already naturally sort of in tune and gifted and actually actively using those abilities and gifts, to add another feather in your cap or a string to your bow is not going to take as much hard work and effort as somebody who is brand new to it. That's not to say that somebody brand new can't do it, because of course they can with time and effort. But if you've already got that foundation, anything new that you uncover, discover, or, you know, unearth or are curious about or whatever it may be, dip your toe in, have a go and see if it sort of feels right for you, if it resonates with you, if you've got a natural flow with it. For me, it needs to feel right, but it needs to be a bit challenging for me to feel that I want to pursue it. If it's too easy, I don't like it. I feel like if it's that easy, like, it's not necessary. Do you know what I mean? It's like if it's too easy, I don't like it. I need to sort of try a bit, because you get that sense of achievement then as well, and you think, oh, that's great. So yeah, that's what happened, and for me, and I would encourage anyone who is fascinated by it to do a bit of research, and obviously, you know, contact me if you want more information. I won't try and sell shit to you unless you fancy it, but I can point you in the right direction of like books and resources and whatnot.
That's awesome. Now, so it's a perfect segue. If there are people that are curious about the Akashic Record or anything that you discuss having that consultation to see if it vibes, like, where are you open to people reaching out to you? And if so, where can they best get a hold of you?
Okay, so my website is louiseharmon.com. Instagram and Facebook at Louise Harmon Co. Find me, add me, and DM me. You know, follow me if you're interested. I'm going through a bit of a transition with my business at the moment, which is great. I'm loving it. And as I say, I'm more than happy for people to ask me questions, jump on a free call, anything like that. And I do tarot readings, Akashic Records readings, aura cleansing, energy healing. You know, there's all sorts of things that I'm capable of doing, that I love doing, and you know, in terms of helping people. And I'm just developing some new coaching packages as well. So obviously there's a bit more money involved in that, because there is that energetic exchange, but it's for anybody that wants to go through, you know, a kind of a healing process and alignment, and then, you know, manifesting, I suppose. Then there are coaching kind of packages available as well, self-paced or package deal. But yeah, it's just contact me. I'm quite sort of I'm breezy, you know, I'm quite free. Quite breezy about it. Whatever you need, payment plans, blah de blah de blah. If you want to work with a proper British girl, come get some.
Who's awesome with band shirts and a sweary mouth, my kind of girl. So you mentioned last time we talked about the most haunted town in the UK is near you. And I think you said it was Pluckley?
Pluckley, that's it.
Yeah. And so I after I talked to you, I did a little bit of Googling, because I was like, I have to know about this.
Right.
And I think it listed at least, 11 different documented ghosts there. And my question is, have you been there?
Yeah, I go there all the time. It's 20 minutes drive away from me. It's nuts, honestly. So we go on somewhere between a ghost hunt and a paranormal investigation. You know, we don't. It's fun, but you know, it is. I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful village. Number one, but yeah, there's been so many sightings there, and as soon as you enter that village, you can feel it. There's an energy there, unlike anything else I've ever experienced. Weirdly, sometimes you can't get in or out. It's like it disappears. It's really peculiar. We went, when did we go? I don't know if it was last year or this year. I don't know. It all blurs into one, doesn't it? A group of us went for what was touted as a Victorian seance. It wasn't. It was bloody nonsense. But the woman, honestly, it was so shit. I'll tell you about it. But the woman that took us has been there. She's, how old is she? 60 odd. She's been there. She's been in and out of Pluckley all her flipping life. And we got lost. And there was no rhyme or reason for it. And then we came out of this turning, and the turnings were different, and there was a different signpost. And we were like, is someone fucking with us? Like, we actually thought somebody was like mucking about. It was obscure, really, really obscure. And I've got so many stories about Pluckley as well from people that I know who have been, like nurses who have visited. My sister used to be a nurse, going and visiting, elderly people or infirm people. And obviously she had friends and everything else. There's so many different things. They've heard the coach and horses go by and thought, holy shit, there's a stagecoach going by. No, there isn't. You can just hear it. It's really strange. The screaming woods. Oh my God. I mean, it's probably going to be foxes and wild boar, but I tell you what, when you're in those woods, there is this sense of impending doom. Even in the daytime, it is insane. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I love it.
I do. There's 2 pubs that are haunted. There's the Black Horse and what's the other one called? Can't remember. But one of them's next to the churchyard, the church and the churchyard. That churchyard is for real. Like, that is it. The shadows. It's like somebody's playing with you. Like, the shadows duck in and out. And the church is insane. If you go in the daytime, the church, it just feels like oppressive, I think, is probably you can feel a density in there. It's really, really strange. But yeah, it's I love it. It's wicked. There's another place called Bilsington Priory, which is very notorious for being haunted, and we're going there in November. We've booked to go there on an actual paranormal investigation. That is going to be nuts. If you come to the UK for any reason, and especially if you want to go on ghost hunts and paranormal investigations and stuff, stay somewhere in South London or North Kent, and you've then got the run of it in between. There's plenty of public transport routes and everything else, and you can go to the most amazing places in London and Kent that will scare the living shit out of you. You will have an experience, without a doubt. Dover Castle, actually a lot of our castles, because everything's, bloody 1,000 years old or whatever, if not older. So in Ashford where I live, there's a place called Barrow Hill, and I was I was just looking up some stuff that goes back to the freaking tribes. This is pre-Roman stuff, and I'm like, oh, so they basically just paved over a long barrow. And that's why it's called Barrow Hill. And I was like, what else is going on underneath all of our turf? I know in America, you're let's say you're quite a young country, and when people go, oh, this house is from the 1800s, that's blown my mind. I'm going to churches that were built in 1066. And it's incredible. The energy is like nothing you've ever experienced. And it's fascinating, it's exciting, it's often terrifying, and well worth doing. I'd recommend, come over. Sorry, I've got on my high horse again. I'm clippy clopping all over the place tonight.
It's because we're proper British. No, I love it. I thank you for coming on. This has been really awesome. I could talk to you all day.
Me too. I was meant to say at the beginning, thank you for having me, but then we kind of went off on one about the best horror films ever.
No, I loved it. That's I will talk all day about the best horror films and haunted places and you name it. I wish you were closer. I'd take you drinking.
Give me a weekly slot, mate. I took the hind legs off a donkey.
You heard her. She's coming back on.
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
I love it.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Well, does anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap it on up?
No,
I think I should shut up.
No, you should never shut up. I love it.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. No.
All right. Well, thank you then. Thank you, Louise, for coming on. Lou, the woo-woo guru.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really, I enjoyed speaking to you the first time around. I've enjoyed this time, and I hope you do it again.
All right. Thank you, Louise, again for coming on. This has been absolutely fantastic. This is one of the subjects that I didn't know a lot about, and you've definitely piqued my interest, and I definitely want to learn more about it. And learn stuff about myself that I don't know. And so thank you for that. And thank you to all of our listeners who are listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And like we do every episode, we do please ask, if you haven't done so already, please follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.
And I'm not asking. Hit that like button. Until next time.
Don't do drugs, kids. That's my advice. Stay in school and take your vitamins. I've turned into Hulk Hogan.
I love that. Take your vitamins. Except I will say this again, as I say every single time that is brought up. I hope no children are listening to this podcast.